Hey, so what's up? Cool things are happening in Priestland. The patch 5.3 is about to come out, and the developers have decided to adjust atonement, which I called way in advance was going to be like a problem. It's too efficient, it's too easy. The ratio that they, like, basically where it's coming from now is they took all of our high throughput spells and they lowered the bar of what's like actually possible for us to do for high throughput, and then they raised the bar on atonement by buffing penance, which is already like exceedingly more powerful compared to holy fire and smite, and they buffed it by 20%. So what they're doing is they're nerfing the damage penance does, and they're also nerfing the amount atonement does in general. I have a spreadsheet here. Here's the comparisons before and after. Just look at the new numbers that are like bright orange and highlighted and bold and big so you can see them. 54k is about how much I was doing before. After this change, I'll be doing about like 44k. It's not going to change my gameplay that much because part of the way I play Atonement right now is, I don't stack DPS stats and only press those spells, but what I do in encounters is go, okay, how long can I possibly prolong just doing only Atonement spells? Can I do anything that's like below 55k healing per second is needed on my end, and if that is the answer yes, then I press atonement the whole fight. So basically it's going to lower this bar by about 19%, but I'm still going to be like pressing atonement all the time because they are not addressing how mana efficient is. They're not addressing how good it is to stack it up to 5 and leave it at 5. There's no incentive to unstack it. As long as you're pressing atonement spells, you're still doing more damage because it has the damage multiplier and it's mana efficient. They're unlinking the Glyph of Smite from it, but you're still going to want to do that rotation for maximizing DPS. And even though Penance is getting a nerf, it's still going to be like the best spell. So you want Strength of Soul to cool it down faster, or not Strength of Soul, but Train of Thought. You still want to cool it down fast as you can if you're trying to maximize your DPS. So I don't think they're really fixing the problem that much, but they are lowering the bar a little bit. But if you do want to cry that the sky is falling, I have the next big thing here for Discipline, the next new button to abuse. Like, theoretically, I feel like the development team sits in a room, like a conference room, and they're just like, these priests, they're always casting just like one spell. We want you to just cast like AoE when it's needed, and when it's not needed in light healing, we want you to cast damage spells, and we want you to selectively single target if people get like dots and stuff. And I feel like they're just talking to this like sea of millions of priests who are just like, oh yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying. So you want us to cast spells, and you don't want us to cast atonement spells, apparently, because you're nerfing it, WTF, so I'm going to cast only Power Word Shield now, which is totally viable. So here's something I didn't really see coming. In the PTR, I was kind of getting into some talks with some other priests about mathematically, is it possible to spam Power Word Shield? Because people were freaking out when it changed to have a reduced mana cost, because they're like, oh my god, it does as much healing as like Prayer of Healing, and it's just going to be spammed. Mathematically, that wasn't working out before, but that was before I understood how the meta gem worked. We have this new meta gem now. This thing procs off of healing spells, gives something called clear casting. Now, I thought this was going to be like the old revitalizing gem from like BC Wrath, where it gave the it gave you like a mana back just chunk on healing spell, but this gives you like a clear casting proc for 4 seconds where your spells cost no mana. So this obviously screams cast your highest throughput single like instance, which is Power Word Shield, which is extra incentivized for Discipline because of borrowed time. You can chain it a little faster during that, so instead of like maybe getting 2 casts off during the proc, you can actually get more like 3. So it's a little bit good for Discipline, but what's also incentivizing this playstyle for me is it doesn't proc from Smite or Holy Fire, because they're considered damage spells. Penance still procs it even if it's used offensively, but you're playing an RNG game if you're only casting Atonement spells, because you can get clear casting to go wildly in your favor or against your favor. It's better to try to cast as many healing spells as you can to reduce that like bell curve of how RNG that goes, because you're having more chances, more opportunities to cast it. I can explain the real proc per minute system later, I don't know. But basically, So it's really good, and it lowers that spirit requirement for power word shield spam. So much so that I have a little spreadsheet about how this works for me. Basically, you only need about 10k to 12k spirit to power word shield spam, but there's some tricks to it. For one, you need Solace and Insanity. It's the most mana that's possible, like theoretical mana throughput that compared to Mindbender anyway. And you want this talent for a couple reasons. One, you want to be casting it close to cooldown because if you're only casting Power Word Shield, you're not really getting Evangelism stacks, which means not really good Archangel uptime. So making sure to cast this like on cooldown is a pretty good source of Evangelism builders. Also, it's putting globals into your rotation. If you were only casting Power Word Shield, you would so fast. But what this does is it like takes one available cast out of that, like, you know, every 10 seconds, and it fills that global with one of these. Also, even if you have Glyph of Weakened Soul and a 10-man, you'll cap out on Weakened Soul on targets, and then you'll have to use some sort of like high throughput spell. Well, this is totally free, and it spaces out that Weakened Soul duration. You can put this in a penance in a rotation or something, or this in a prayer bending, and you can like chain cast as the Weakened Souls come off of each target. And then you want Power Infusion for the mana reduction, not so much for the throughput. And then you want Halo or Cascade are my recommendations for 90. I choose Halo because Halo is good clutch burst healing, and if you're blanket bubbling people, you don't really have really good clutch burst healing, especially with your cooldown usage. You kind of want to chain cooldown your Archangel, because you're only casting Power Word Shields, and anything you can do to maximize that effectiveness, which using Archangel would do that. And then I also use Spirit Shell pretty much on cooldown because it's less mana consumption compared to Power Word Shield spam, and you're churning through like 3,554 mana per minute before your regen effects come in, so you're going through mana pretty quickly, even in Inner Will, which is what you should be using for this. And yeah, I use Spirit Shell pretty much in cooldown, but I also use Archangel in cooldown, and the occasional Inner Focus with Prayer of Healing. So I'm calling right now that this is a really effective playstyle. I did some logs testing on some high healing per second fights to see like how good it was compared to like the traditional way or my other tests, which were like high atonement spamming, and it was really super effective for these clutch like healing fights, especially the big bursty healing. I'm thinking like Megara, Duramu, which is spread out, the Iron Con encounter, Twin Consorts, like even Li Shen, like these were all really pushovers for healing employing this strategy. I didn't know how it would work out in a 25-man, but for a 10-man it's pretty overpowered. So this is the next big thing. Take advantage of it before it gets nerfed. Take care.